Welcome to the Time for a Reset podcast, the podcast where I, Paul Frampton, interview senior marketeers on the big issues of the day and the thing that they want to see reset with an ever-changing landscape.
Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of Time for a Reset. This afternoon, I'm delighted to be joined by Cheryl Calverley, who is the CEO for EveSleep. Cheryl was previously the CMO there and has had a very long career in marketing. And we're delighted to have her here this morning to talk about her views on the role that marketing plays within business. So welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you, Paul. I'm not sure a very long career is what I want to hear right now. I'm feeling very old. There you go.
What I mean is experienced and wise.
Thank you.
So I think you know where we usually start with the conversation, which is to explore what is the aspect of the marketing industry or marketing as a discipline that if you had a magic wand that you would change tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a good opening question, isn't it? I think it's an issue we've always had as marketeers. I mean, inherently as marketeers, we are always seeking innovative, new, interesting and creative. But I think what I would like to change tomorrow, if I could with a magic wand, is we are losing sight and have lost sight of our fundamentals and the fact that the interesting, the new, the innovative and the creative are vital, but they are tactics to execute on a strategy, and the strategy should not be innovative, new, whatever. The strategy should be the strategy that you set out for your business, which is rooted in very, very clear data, insight, consumer planning, and that you follow for a sustained period of time with as many wildly varying tactics as you like, but it has to hold to one strategy. And I think we've lost the clarity on what is the strategy and the fact that it takes time to build a brand and time to land a strategy, and what are the tactics which can be, as wild and interesting as you like.
Right, interesting. And it does feel that kind of piece around strategy and planning, a lot of marketeers particularly would maybe say that agencies are more focused on digital and thinking about, as you say, those shiny new things than they are about kind of really starting with kind of strategy, understanding the customer and thinking about the customer journey. Do you think that is across the board, or is it just because there's been a lot more of a rise of direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands that have led us to think more about digital as the first point of call?
Agencies will do what their client asks them with the best will in the world. And the best agencies don't necessarily do what their client asks them. They hold their client's feet to the fire and challenge them in the right way. But even the very, very best agencies in the world are fundamentally working for a client. There is a power imbalance there. So when we see agencies being less strategic and more distractible and more tactic-led, it tells you that that's what their client is asking them. It doesn't tell you that's what agencies don't wake in the morning and decide that they want to be tactic-led. Agencies wake in the morning and say, I want to do great work for my clients and make business. So I don't think I would point the finger at agencies, and I also wouldn't put the finger at digital per se. It is... honestly, it's probably a lack of robust marketing training. And I think it's the lack of, quite honestly, sort of senior marketers like myself stepping forward and leaning in and training and supporting and challenging as well. Marketing is a science and it's a profession. It's not an art form.
No, absolutely. And actually, listening to you there reminds me of a conversation I had a few episodes ago with Thomas Barter, who does a lot of work with the Marketing Society, and he talks a lot about the fact that we've lost the focus on really training in the craft of marketing, and that there is too much of a focus on these quick growth hacking solutions to growing a business. So I hear you. And when you spoke at MadFest a few weeks ago, one of the things that I was really interested in was that transition that you made from obviously owning marketing as the chief marketing officer up to owning everything, owning the bottom line, the P&L for the business. Could you maybe just touch on what were the key things that changed for you as you stepped into that role? And did it change the way that you looked at marketing once you had remit across the entire organization?
It's an interesting question. So I, as a marketeer, I've always owned the P&L and would always look at a full P&L because marketing is a full P&L. I say a full P&L, to be honest. It's a full P&L normally down to what you would describe as profit before indirects.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a level of the P&L which sits in overheads and indirects, which even as a marketeer, you tend to go, that is probably the remit of the finance and people guys. But the P&L all the way down to operating profit, if you like, is completely the job of the marketeer, and they should have end-to-end understanding of that P&L. It's driven by the products, the pricing, the margins, the sourcing, as well as the marketing investment and the growth and the logistics around that. So I'm quite lucky in that I've grown up as that sort of marketeer, and I think that comes from growing up in FMCG. So when I sort of stepped up to be CEO, the way I looked at the business didn't change, because that's how a marketeer looks at the business. Yes, I spent a bit more time talking about the office rent than I had before, but not a lot more time. As a CMO, as a CMO, you're sitting on a board and you should be having these conversations as a board anyway. You are a leader in your business and you should have as much a view on, the office rent and the people strategy as you do on your marketing strategy. That's why you're part of a board team. But as a marketeer, inherently, understanding the end-to-end dynamics of P&L are core to a marketeer's skill set. And if you don't have that in your skill set as a marketeer, you need to go and acquire that before you then step up.
No, I think that's a fabulous point, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Pete Markey, who I know you know, spent a lot of time talking about that fact that the CMO has to be able to turn up and have a leadership conversation around any aspect of the board agenda, not just marketing. Do you feel like, not in EveSleep, not in your kind of area, but do you feel like marketing in FTSE 100 companies or brands across the board has become more important or less important in the last 5 years?
I don't think you can lump either FTSE 100 companies or brands across the board in all together. So I think there are businesses which are nothing but their marketing, and high growth businesses, particularly e-commerce businesses, are so marketing driven. The number one investment is their marketing. They don't own often the means of manufacture or the means of supply. They often don't own IP. They don't own product development or tech. So an awful lot of young businesses high growth businesses are marketing, and without marketing they're nothing. So for those businesses, marketing is absolutely core and vital. And actually, you see in those businesses, marketing then gets split up into a number of functions because it's so important. So you might have a separate performance director or commercial director, separate to a brand director, separate to a creative director. Somewhere in there, you might have a customer director. In other businesses, that's all one person. So actually, marketing has become more important there. And then there are other businesses, I think, where marketing gets sidelined into communications. And that inherently is one small bit of the business,
right?
Because the other aspects of marketing, your products, your pricing, your promotional strategy, your distribution strategy, your means of supply, sit elsewhere across the business, and they've been pulled away from marketing. So I think it's a very difficult question to answer, and it does go back to this understanding how the full marketing mix works together to deliver a customer proposition, and who is best placed to understand that in the business.
Great. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And you talked about the various aspects of marketing, and that it's obviously a lot more than comms or advertising. So about products, pricing, proposition. In fact, like schooled marketeers, particularly in FMCG marketing, will have obviously been taught about the 6 Ps. I'm not sure maybe today's marketeers are maybe kind of brought through that same kind of training. But I remember at MadFest, you talked a lot about the fact that EveSleep had experienced and enjoyed incredible growth powered by marketing. And then one day, as competition started to get more aggressive and you started to see some of that kind of wearing off, and I think you used the phrase that actually it felt like marketing was almost broken. Could you maybe share your reflections on that and what you kind of did in terms of reviewing the role that marketing played in terms of kind of growing the business?
I think it's a great example of seeing communications as marketing. So when we kind of, when I joined the business and we said, look, the marketing is inefficient. What they meant was very specifically, the performance investment in communications has become inefficient. So tactic, your performance media investment in one of your 5 Ps, communications, proposition, promotion, has become inefficient. So the overall marketing mix had a problem in it right across the piece. The pricing was wrong versus competitors. The product was wrong versus competitors. Broadly, our distribution strategy wasn't perfect, both in terms of where we were turning up digitally. Our SEO wasn't quite as good as it should be, and whether we were distributed in physical partners. Mm-hmm. Yes, then our investment strategy was inefficient, but these things all operate together. Oh, and on top of that, what was our creative and communications doing from a messaging point of view? So never does one thing in a business. So no business is ever driven by one thing. Businesses are incredibly complex ecosystems, because consumers are. And never does one thing in a business suddenly just stop working of its own volition. Like one aspect of the business doesn't just suddenly stop working. There is a reason these things have happened. And you always need to step back and go, let me look at my whole mix and look at my mix in the context of the market and the context of the consumer and work out what's going on here and how these things are interacting.
So it sounds like you almost did like a root and branch review of all of the aspects. And I can imagine that for some in the organization, they might have felt that was quite a scary place to be. So I'm interested in how you engaged and motivated the senior team to kind of think about almost like looking at it again and kind of starting. I think you used the phrase getting your house in order at Madfest. So was it difficult to get everyone to realize that you almost needed to re-engineer everything, or was that actually an exciting thing for the leadership team?
Well, I think the thing's a few things. So I would never recommend anyone walks into any business and tells the business they need to re-engineer everything. It will terrify 98% of people and lead them running for the hills. So, and I also don't think, it's very easy with 2020 hindsight to go, yeah, we did a root and branch review of the end to end, this and that and the other. There was no point where we sat there and locked us away for 3 days and looked at all this. This is just, I think, much more of a systematic working through of each bit of the 5 Ps and going, let's get that bit right. Right, okay, let's get that bit right. Right, okay, let's get that bit right. And just systematically working through the business. It wasn't right, everyone stop, down tools, we're turning this boat into a plane. But equally, it's a business that inherently you don't tend to employ me because everything's going absolutely fine. You'd like to just chug along as you are. I'm not an optimizer. I've got a background broadly in sort of transformation, rejuvenation. I'm a change catalyst, as Unilever used to call people like me. So, I've been brought in because the business couldn't continue as it was. It was an absolutely burning platform. And when you've got a burning platform, saying to people, look, I think we need to systematically change this and change this and change this and change this. And by the way, the team structure is wrong. By the way, the investment structure is wrong. It's not a difficult conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this transformation per se, as you say, you've spent a lot of your career going in and turning rounds and improving businesses and getting them into growth. Is there some kind of consistent kind of learnings you have about how to do that? Or do you find that, as you said earlier, that one FTSE 100 business is very different to another, and it's actually just about immersing yourself in that particular business? And obviously this was a very different model, a D2C business, before you can start to apply that change agenda. Because a lot of PE firms hire very similar people as CEOs to put in to go, we know you've turned this company around and you can do it again. So I'm interested in your approach to that. Do you find that there are some consistencies, or is it is it just about spending the time listening to the customers, understanding the challenges within the business, and then applying your magic?
I think it's difficult because I've done it in the businesses I've done in it. So I've done it in FMCG, sort of 2 or 3 different brands in FMCG, and then the AA, which is sort of breakdown and insurance, and then EveSleep's. So it's not like I've done it in 40 businesses and I can sort of draw lots of parallels. And equally, I've done it in businesses that I'm attracted to, that I thought I could do it in. So I've not gone into a business that needed root and branch technological restructuring, because that's not my skill set. So there is a sweet spot of businesses that are brand led, which have got sort of very great root strengths in their brand and in their product, a real consumer need, that need rejuvenation and sort of complete sort of almost resetting. Now in those businesses, it is fairly straightforward, which is you do absolutely just start with the customer. You start with the customer, you start with the customer need. You go, does this need still exist? Is it growing? Are we meeting it as well or better than all of the, I was going to say competition? And then the other thing, I think the big thing at Eve, particularly, is to really be clear on what our strengths are as a business, where we've got differentiating advantage and where we don't. And to understand that. So, I came into the business, and like we are not experts in performance marketing. I'm not a performance marketing expert. We've not got people with 50 years of experience in performance marketing. Let's work with a performance marketing partner here, an agency. We work with Crowd, and let's focus our specialisms and skills where we can be best in class. So I think it's understanding, where you've got best in class in your own business, or you can build that and it suits you, and where you're better to go and work with partners in whatever way, shape, and form to build that best in class. Not trying to. There can be a habit to try and do everything in-house, but you'll end up sort of mediocre at lots of stuff and not seeing the stuff that you're really good at, I think, if you do that.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, where I've seen successful transformations, obviously the ownership is in-house and the accountability is in-house, but working with the right partners in different places and orchestrating how they come together, it tends to drive that transformation forward more quickly. I'm interested in the evolution of, I guess, EveSleep as a D2C that I imagine probably started with bottom of the funnel performance marketing and then started to build its brand. And obviously you've taken on a whole other journey so that now it doesn't just talk about being a mattress brand, it talks about a very different proposition. There are lots of D2C brands that seem to struggle to get out of the bottom of the funnel and struggle to encourage their investors or convince their investors that they should invest in that brand. Is there a trick there to influence investors? Is it about just having very smart attribution and modeling within the business, or is there anything you could share about that, Cheryl?
I mean, Eve didn't start a performance business.
Okay.
Interestingly, I mean, or less. I mean, it's heavily performance driven, like all D2C brands, but much less so than most. Very early on, Eve. So the very inception of Eve, one of the founders of Eve was a guy called Kuba, who had been part of For Creative, part of Wyden's. He was a creative at heart, by profession. So the business was formed with brand and creating a differentiated brand right in the center of its DNA, alongside his partner, Jazz, who is much more performance led. So I think the brand started with a good balance. They went on TV. We went on TV very, very early. So we were on TV from, I'm trying to remember, but I think it was 2017, having been born in 2016, we were on TV, low level daytime TV, but still getting there very quickly. And that's I think it's about having the confidence and understanding how to get out, how to be more than performance marketing from very early on.
Yeah.
And I think that always paved way. Now a lot of that wasn't done brilliantly as the business learned how to optimize its balance of spend across the mixes. I think it's an interesting one. So how do you get out of being a performance brand? So as a performance brand, you are if you're performance only, you're inherently sweating a funnel of people, and you're sweating a market at the bottom of the market. If that market is big enough for the business you want to be,
sure, yeah,
there is no need to get out of performance marketing and be brand. I mean, it all depends on your business ambition. If, however, your business ambition is to be bigger than that, or indeed sweating that market becomes increasingly inefficient because there's more competition turning up, that's when people need to step into brand. And you can look at all the brands. Uber suddenly has to start spending on advertising. Not Uber. Uber taxis have to start spending on advertising when the taxi competitors come up. It's as competitors turn up in your marketplace, suddenly it's much less efficient to sweat the bottom funnel performance, and you need to find a way to generate demand as well as harvesting demand. To create customers as well as find customers, and that is a very different skill set. And so convincing investors is very simple. Is simple. You've either reached the end of your runway of harvesting customers, in which case the only conversation is, well, we need to create customers, or you haven't, in which case you can continue to harvest. I think the important dynamic is that to create customers, you have to have an offering which fits often a bigger customer need. You've got to elevate beyond, we just make a very good this, which is relevant only at the very point of need. So part of the reason we are driving to become a sleep wellness business and we have an extended product set is, without being a sleep wellness business and having a wider product set, that step into broadcast advertising where you're trying to create customers will always be inefficient because there's not enough in market.
Yeah.
So you have to be a broader business with a broader offering and a bigger promise to find enough people that you're relevant for to step out and create this. Does that make sense?
No, it's a really great point, actually. And it makes a lot of sense because, of course, there's only so many people in market in category for a new mattress.
Exactly.
I don't know how long people keep a mattress for. I'm guessing it's 6 to 10 years cycle. So by broadening out the relevancy you have to people's lives, it does make a lot more sense to build a brand in kind of broader reach media.
Well, exactly. And I think that's so when you see businesses that struggle, or they talk about struggling to step into brand, it's because either they haven't got enough of a burning platform with competition, so they're still efficient from a performance point of view, in which case I'd be like, well, don't, wait until you need to, because it's a very expensive hobby, by the way, and it's quite scary because inherently you're doing something you don't know is going to work. There's no way to sort of test. You have to do it and see if it worked. So they've not got enough of a competitive burning platform to step into brand, or they haven't got a broad enough offering and customer promise to make that broad, untargeted reach work cost it.
Yeah, no, very good. No, thank you for that. That's a really interesting insight. And your point about a burning platform and competitors, totally buy, of course, if you're going to suddenly invest heavily into above the line advertising comms beyond and above your other marketing, that you don't want to just do that without a clear kind of strategy. But part of me is thinking in my head, waiting for competition to come is also dangerous. Is there some kind of middle ground where you should start to think about broadening your reach and broadening your proposition, so that you don't wait until another 6 mattress brands turn up with cheaper pricing and quicker delivery or whatever else it might be? Cheryl, I'm just interested in how do you wait for that burning platform, or do you try to preempt the fact that by signals and intent changing, maybe on Google or whatever else, you know it's coming? It feels like if you wait for the burning platform, you're only going to be trying to catch up. If that makes sense.
Yeah, look, fundamentally there is an element of competition is healthy and useful. So what competition will normally do is grow a category and grow customer awareness. So there is an element of you kind of need to wait for a bit of competition to make everything work a bit better. So suddenly a category will seem noisy, and it's because competition has turned up. And at that point, you'll find customers flooding into the category. So that's quite a useful thing to have competition, spending some money on your category. And certainly in FMCG, you'll often see one of the challenges you get is if you're a category leader, when you spend money, you support the whole category. And there's a lot of arguments. So the best place to be in FMCG is number 2 in the category. That's the most efficient place to be, not number 1. And I'm fairly strong proponent of that. So I think there's elements of that. I also think there's elements of human nature. When you're asking people to do, to go and build a brand, it requires a very different skill set to what you'll have in the business historically. It requires bravery, by which I mean the idiocy of gambling on the unknown. So call that bravery if you want to. Other people may call it idiocy.
Yeah.
It requires a very meaty investment on pretty much no data, because you've got to go and do it and then retrospectively look at it. Doing all that and convincing people to do that when there is no really good reason to.
Right. No, I hear you. Yeah.
Quite difficult. And,
Sure.
I think if you are sitting on, if you're a multi-billionaire that's invented this business, then of course you do.
Yeah.
But most businesses are being run for long-term, profitable, sustainable growth. And, until you have that burning platform, it doesn't necessarily look like the right thing to do. Now, you've got to do it quickly, though. I think that one thing, what I would say is set yourself up. So if you know it's going to come, right? You see it. You see the competition start to turn up. You see the barrier. Most importantly, that the barriers to entry in the category have dropped, and therefore people will turn up. So since it's easy to enter, people will enter. And I think it's keeping an eye on that competition and being set up and ready to go when it comes. Not spending the next 2 years deciding you now need to write a strategy and build some products and make some advertising.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And Some people might call that agility, which I hear it being used a lot. That term in the marketing sphere. I mean, obviously, in a lot of tech businesses, that term is used. Are you a subscriber to the philosophy of agility as opposed to the adjective agility, or is it just about to the point you just getting on with, pick up the signals, stay close to the market and your customers, and then adapt? I'm just really fascinated about whether marketing is adopting agility as a real kind of, in terms of the framework of agility with sprints and ceremonies and all that kind of thing. I hear a lot of businesses actually starting to do it, but are you a believer in that? Is that necessary, or have you worked out a model that works just because you're a fast growth business and there's an urgency to keep on focus all the time?
So I prefer preparedness to agility, in the way I look at our marketing team. So it's a bit by the way your mind works, isn't it? My mind tends to work with a kind of 18-month set of things that might happen, and I've kind of got prepared in my mind and across the team for various things that might happen in various orders. So I know what happens if the market does this, we'll do that. I know what happens if the market does this, we'll do that. I know what happens if this product does well or not, we'll do that, we'll do this. So I suppose I don't tend to run a marketing team in an agile way, because I think it's quite difficult, but I do have a very clear sort of central sort of strategy, and then I have a number of options and scenarios that we all know. And we all know, if we get a listing over here, then that's going to trigger that, and we're going to make that happen. We've all got almost a kind of a set of mental options, which we are prepared for. That's from a marketing point of view, and that suits me. That's how my mind works. Other people might work differently, but that's how my mind works. Multiple options around a central strategy, and then we can sort of flex across options. As a business, we try and work relatively agile, but I think the most important thing that we take out as a business from agile as a concept is focus on the big stuff that matters. So the challenge you get in a small business is everything needs doing. Absolutely everything needs doing. Everything in a small business tends to be done with spit and sawdust on Google Sheets, and it's incredibly manual. And as your people get better, and my people are brilliant, and as the business gets stronger, the people are going, quite rightly, there's all this stuff we should be and could be doing, but we're too busy, updating the Google Sheet to make sure that this order's going to happen. So the challenge that we have as a small business is we've got all businesses have limited resources. We very much have limited resources. Where should we focus our attention to move the business forward? And where are the big blue chip activities? And so we try and take the principle from Agile, which is putting cross-functional teams together on what we call blue chips in the business, which we try and run in a relatively agile way. They're not full agile. I mean, the tech team works full agile. But they are running what's the next 2 weeks? What's the next 4 weeks? What's the big thorny stuff we've yet to tackle? And we talk about that rhythm as a team and as a business. We haven't got it right. We're trying. We've only kind of been. I mean, this is something I sort of slightly brought in. So we've only been working this way for about sort of 6 months. It's got loads of teething problems, but it has allowed decision making to move much more into the business day to day, because it was sitting with us in the exec team and we don't know jack shit really. So there are more people making more decisions day to day on what matters, who are actually running the business than there were before. So I think it's getting there. Which in
itself, sounds like a great success, because a lot of companies struggle to ever cascade that down. And I'm sure you've noticed the business moving faster as a result of that.
Well, we're the ideal size. I mean, there's a great bit of organizational psychology theory which says the ideal size for a team is between 60 and 80. And then I mean, we are a business of about pretty much 60 people. Like, we are the perfect size to be effective as a team. So yes, I think it's helping. It's causing teething problems, but I suppose I'm frustrated that if we can't do this as a 60-person business, which is basically all front end, then God knows how you put it in at IBM or Direct Line.
I know, really interesting. And I think your articulation of an agile type approach, I think, sounds like a very practical and pragmatic one. From the different marketeers that I've spoken to about it, I think there's there's a number of different camps. There's the camps that are desperately trying to do it and have tried to do it to the letter of the law and are really struggling with it. And then there's some folks that are a lot closer to where you are, which is take what works and don't be a slave to it, but just make sure that it helps improve things, helps prioritize, helps focus on data and learning and retros, etc. And then there's another camp who just want to use it as an adjective, and the reality is nothing really has changed. So I really appreciate those insights, Cheryl. As we move towards the close of this chat, you talked at MadFest about the importance of investing in the future, investing in data, content, and e-commerce. Now, of course, as a D2C e-commerce business, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm also just interested in the understory as to why you focused on particularly data and content. Why are they so important to you as you build this kind of broader sleeper wellness brand?
Yeah, I suppose as we look forward, what I'm always looking at is if I put £1 into the marketing engine, how does it create as much? Let's use the analogy of petrol. If £1 is a litre of petrol, how do I get as many miles out of that litre of petrol as I possibly can? Every pound I put in has to get more and more effective, not just efficient. And then to be more effective, it has to have a stronger multiplier effect on the whole customer journey. And in order to get a stronger multiplier effect, the differentiating advantage you have as a D2C business is direct contact with my customer. I have my customer's data and email address. I'm able to understand more and more about what they bought last, and therefore what I shouldn't try and sell them again, or what they bought last and what they might want to buy. And if I can build out on that a much better knowledge of who they are and what they're looking for, which is where content comes in, I can hopefully not only build out a knowledge of, well, they turned up, they did 3 clicks and 4 scrolls, but they read an article on child sleep, which they sent on to a friend. That's quite interesting. Maybe next time they turn up, I should put them into the baby sleep category. So using data to really understand. I hate to you say data to understand the customer. It's nonsense. Using data triggers to make that pound that I put in ever more effective, not just efficient, effective, and derive us more long-term growth is the differentiating advantage we will have as a business versus a non-D2C business. On the flip side, we have an awful lot of very big competitors who've got, if you go to John Lewis probably got, they've probably got a data team of 80 people. And they've probably got 9 different data platforms, whatever. But what I do know, if they're anything like any other legacy business, and there's a lot of legacy businesses I've worked in, those platforms are not talking to each other, and they're not seamless, and they're not slick. And to transform those platforms to make them work effectively is hundreds of millions of pounds and many, many years.
Yeah.
We don't have that data debt and that tech debt, so we're able to build from scratch today something which is much more nimble and operative without being sort of laden with integration. So our differentiating advantage against the big guys is this kind of literally a machine that works together, an effective integrated customer-centric machine. And our differentiated advantage against the retail is the fact we're D2C and we have that data. And that means that my pounds, because I've just got to make my weapons work harder because I've got very little pounds.
Right.
Everyone else, I've got tiny little like slingshots, and everyone else has got bazookas. So we've got to go and make those slingshots work really, really hard, and inch by inch we'll get there. I think the other thing, it's the thing I'm quite passionate about, is we are born e-commerce. So what we are not is
you're not adapting into it. Yeah,
we're not adapting into it, and I think if you look at e-commerce to date, it's always been how do we do what shops did, but even better? How do we sell stuff even harder? Yeah, even better, even more efficiently. And don't get me wrong, we're brilliant. I mean, Amazon is the best shop in the world, right? It fucking knows how to sell. Sorry, language. Is that all right? Sorry.
Don't worry.
So I should have checked that at the beginning.
That shows you're passionate about this point.
I'm so sorry. Amazon knows how to sell things really well and really hard. But consumers didn't go to shops because they got sold things really, really hard.
No.
There's a load of reasons people went to shops. And we will see, as we come out of the pandemic, people will go back to shops for good reason. So the question I've got for my team is, what is a future e-commerce experience that gives a customer everything that they love about a shop, not just hard selling? And how can we do the thing that you could never do in a shop, which we always wanted to do, which is create a genuinely consumer-centric, needs-centric category? You can't go into a sleep wellness shop. It'd be a weird shop. There's not a sleep wellness aisle. And endlessly we've talked to retailers about how do you get to a sleep wellness aisle? And you don't get there. You get to, well, here's the bedding aisle and here's the cushions aisle.
Right.
We can create in e-commerce is genuinely a sleep wellness, customer needs centric consumer experience, which does e-commerce, but also creates a bit more of what you might love from a shop, which might be about content, it might be about advice, it might be about aftercare and support. So that's the challenge I've got, is what is the future of e-commerce if the past was selling like a shop yet harder? What is the future?
Yeah, no, I really like that. And it reminds me actually of a conversation I had with Benedict Evans, who talked about there's two sorts of e-commerce. There's logistics e-commerce, which, as you said, Amazon are superb at that. And then there's experiential e-commerce, which I suppose is where some of the more kind of fashion-orientated e-com brands like Farfetch and Net-a-Porter are trying to go. And to your point, why can't a digital experience of buying something also bring that experiential point to the point that you can do in a world where there's not people necessarily in front of each other? But of course, there's lots of tech that does enable that, as we found out in the last 12 months or so. So I really like that point.
And I think also just, the higher order business question then is how do you make that a commercially interesting business model?
Right.
So how do you create revenue streams which are not just us selling our products? How do you turn that whole content ecosystem so you're a hybrid publisher, affiliate, reviewer, e-commerce, experiential, customer service? How do you create a very diverse business from a revenue stream point of view that then makes, again, those marketing pounds
go further,
more and more powerful?
No, absolutely. I mean, you start me thinking around like the originations of some of content marketing, like the Michelin Guide, and I guess what Red Bull do with a lot of their content, and the fact that actually quite often, particularly in a new emerging area like wellness, which is still fairly new, that the quality of content that serves the audiences and what they want is often a little bit suboptimal. So actually a business that has got all of the data points from transacting with customers looking for kind of product in that space is probably going to be in the best place to actually create the content, in the same way that Future has realized as a publisher that they needed to get into commerce because they do all the discovery. It's kind of like the reverse engineer of that. I think that's really interesting.
That's exactly what it is. It's the reverse engineer of the way publishing have gone into product.
The other thing that I like, which I just wanted to highlight, was the point you made about effectiveness. I think too often we in this industry obsess about the other E word.
Yes,
and it's just about, give me a business case. That means cost savings. Like, well, no, that's not the only business case that exists on the planet. It might be that you invest, and invest is usually a word that means you're going to make money back. So I think that effective word, I mean, obviously you've got the IPA Effectiveness Awards, but I think it's the brands that really focus in on that effectiveness as well as efficiency that really work out the nuances of how things work together, as you said. And we could probably talk about kind of why brand and performance are so separated and all those, but unfortunately we're not going to have time to go that deep into that. So as we come to a close, Cheryl, I'd just love to ask you a couple of final questions. The first is, if there's one metric that you as CEO of EveSleep care about, what would that be?
It's not one, but it's a bunch of metrics that sit around sort of customer experience. So as a small business, every customer represents a much greater percentage of our customers. And also there's nothing harder to change than someone's opinion of their direct experience of a product. So if your mum phones you and tells you she has got a terrible Eve mattress and you shouldn't buy one, no amount of money I spend, no amount will change your view. It is the most powerful thing you hear. And so in a small business, the impact, equally, if you're the AA, the fact that your great granddad was an AA member is probably one of the powerful things. So that's the heritage, Right. So almost trying to create our future heritage of word of mouth is a massive priority for me. And also, again, to the point on the future business and e-commerce, customer experience is the new battlefield. It was about how good your stores are, and now it's about how good your delivery experience and checkout and aftercare and support sits. So it's all the kind of metrics that sit around that. And I don't really have one. It's not the easiest thing in the world to measure. I mean, we use NPS. I think there's pros and cons. We obviously have hard metrics, on time in full and perfect order and things like that, which we look at. I look at Trustpilot a lot. and what's our Trustpilot scores doing. And we are absolutely straight down the line. We play a totally straight bat with Trustpilot because I like it as an actual metric rather than a sort of sales driver.
Yeah.
We also ask all of our customers after they've been with our products for anything between 2 weeks and 100 days, depending on the product, how they're sleeping now compared to how they were sleeping.
Oh, interesting.
So
that's really kind of on top of NPS.
Yeah, because we're a sleep wellness business. So, and there's quite a few like sort of care businesses and healthcare businesses that do exactly this. But if we're not delivering on that promise of helping you sleep better, so the thing that someone will really do, your mum, you'll say you'll know if your mum's sleeping badly because she's your mum, and then you'll go, "Oh, how are you sleeping, mum?" And she'll go, "God, I'm sleeping so much better. I've got this new mattress."
Right. Yeah.
So they're much more likely to tell you that than to spontaneously start selling you a mattress. So what we're trying to sell you, what we're trying to give you, create for the customer, the need we're trying to meet is to sleep better, sleep wellness. And so asking our customers whether they're sleeping better is pretty key to us. It's also not to get purposey and mission-y, but as a team, it is kind of why we come to work each day rather than going to work for someone who does something much less fulfilling. We like the feeling that we're helping people sleep better. It really is very important, good sleep. You personally know, we all know. Absolutely. And so as a metric, as a team, it's one that we can get around and we can feel is not sort of a hard commercial metric, but is a genuinely consumer-centric metric.
No, I like that. I think often I hear people trying to talk about exactly what you just articulated, like that, a real-world metric that actually can be connected to the commercials, and it feels like that's a really good place. Interestingly, actually, last week I saw a Harvard piece that said that there are 7 types of rest, ranging through from emotional to creative to mental to physical rest. So I definitely agree that good sleep is important, and also just I think our concept of wellness, we're only really just starting to explore the different avenues and part of that, and even mental health, right? A whole different discussion, but I think it feels like you guys are in a very good place to explore and play with a lot of that other space. And once people feel like you've helped them with sleep, which is a fundamental part of being able to be a productive person, it feels like you've got the permission to step into some of those other places that you're talking about.
Well, this is all about being prepared, Paul. That's the point. It's not so much agile, it's just making sure we're prepared.
Nicely brought back there. Nicely brought back. So very final question, Cheryl. We have senior marketers, I guess, agency people and budding marketeers probably listening to this podcast. You've very eloquently talked about the importance of kind of marketing principles and kind of being solid to them, and really making sure that you have your house in order and that you really understand what your customers want. And then we've talked about making sure that every pound goes as far as it can in terms of effectiveness and the different metrics. But if you were to summarize like what you would tell people to go away and really focus on in order to take the journey you have, right? Go through marketing and become a CEO, because I'm sure there are some people that are thinking, I'd love to be able to do that. But Cheryl's got it all together and she knows everything, and she's worked at Unilever, she's worked at AA. I'm never going to be that. What advice would you give to people to make it almost like an accessible kind of thing for them to go on a journey for?
CEO and being a CMO. And I'm a CEO here at Eve, but I'm also the CMO at Eve, and that's a very privileged position to be in. And I'm not sure how I'll feel if I ever end up being a CEO but not a CMO. I think that'll be a difficult time. I think, do you know what? I think it's about well, for me, for me, it's about a fascination with people and a fascination with what makes them tick and makes them do stuff. And that means that I read it and I watch it and I listen it. And unfortunately, most of my spare moments are spent being very sad and involved in the industry, listening to people, talking to people, doing stuff. It's a passion and a fascination for me. I mean, I've got a psychology background. I think if it's not a passion and a fascination for you, you'll probably miss stuff. And the most important thing, and most of my career, my feedback has been I'm very bad at this, is to listen.
Right.
And listening is a art form that you have to practice.
It is. No, you're right. It is, like, to truly actively listen is definitely something that you have to work with. I've definitely learned that over my career as well. So look, I love I love that end point, the point around passion and curiosity and kind of interest in human behavior, because at the end of the day, that's not what just drives marketing, it's what actually makes businesses successful. So look, thank you so much, Cheryl. I really enjoyed this. I think you've given us a really candid and kind of interesting, deep insight into EveSleep, but also the way that you think. So I'm very appreciative of your time.
You're very welcome, Paul. It's been a delight.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Time for a Reset. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. We'll be back talking to a senior marketeer very soon. Make sure you don't miss out on any new episodes by subscribing on Apple, Spotify or SoundCloud, and leave us a review at timeforareset.co.uk.